slew of new text messages from Andrew Tate reveal the tactics he allegedly employed to lure women to sex trafficking. As former anchor on the show, Kim Iverson, pointed out, quote, incredibly damning messages from Andrew Tate showcasing how he isolated the women and used deception with the explicit intent of getting them to do sex work.
Now, according to reporting in Rolling Stone, a bunch of screen grabs from 2021 messages from the War Room, which is Tate's all-male network of associates, actually do show him boasting about his ability to manipulate women, particularly one of his girlfriends, into sex work. The article alleges that he said, quote, man, I almost sound evil, after kind of evaluating his own statements in these messages. These messages are very bad. He admits to conduct that I think almost virtually everyone would find appalling. Should say that at least one or multiple of the women they're describing have been reached for comment, and they totally stridently deny that they were sex trafficked or that there was anything wrong about how they were treated, which, again, we're supposed to take victims at their words, right? They're saying they're not victims of anything. I do think I think Andrew Tate is clearly a bad figure, is not someone to emulate. So I take more issue with the fact that he's been kind of deified in some circles. Like people are looking to him for guidance in a Jordan Peterson type way, as some on the right, not everyone, but some have, and just kind of iconoclastic people have, said this is someone to revere and to learn from. He's like kind of a hero or a guru, and that seems just crazy to me because he's utterly despicable. But whether he's despicable and whether he's guilty of sex trafficking are, to me, different things. Right. And again, while this behavior is really bad, not at all underselling how bad it is. He's negging women, he's manipulating them, he's saying really awful things to them to get them to produce content for OnlyFans. I don't know if it doesn't demonstrate that and he's using kind of classic like cult tactics of isolating and not wanting to go back and visit your family, break off contacts with your family. That is like cult behavior. Is it, did he actually physically prohibit them from leaving or force them to do this kind of behavior?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that was his explicit goal. I can understand the victims in this case saying, I wasn't manipulated into doing this work, I wasn't sex trafficked, because it is a part of their intentional grooming process to make them believe they're making this decision based on their agency, right? That this is something they're deciding to do, which isn't always the case. Oftentimes, which they spoke about in these messages that have now been made public, is that they find women who are, struggling financially, who are broke, who have no other options. They give them the option to coming over and living with them and making the content, come and have a new life and get rich with me, they would say. They said in the text messages, let her sit broke for a few days and think about it. She's going to realize that she has no other options and come here. So I think it's very difficult probably for these women to admit the situation that they were in and admit that they were a victim when they've been sold this dream that they're business partners and they're coming there to have a better life, which is what Andrew Tate said. And when he said that he sounds almost evil, he's talking about a case which they call the hardest case you can have in the business, which is when a woman says she's uncomfortable making this content because she has a husband. And then their game plan is act deeply hurt by her refusal, flip it on her, get her to start feeling guilty or cry for not sending explicit content when she has a husband. She's broke, she can't get home, she can't leave the house. Man, I sound almost evil, but I'm not. I'm a shepherd leading the sheep. She doesn't realize that following me makes life better for her. So I just don't understand how this is a person who is revered by so many of the same people who are disgusted by Jeffrey Epstein. It sounds very clear to me that he lured women to work for him as sex workers. and preyed on them when they were in vulnerable positions. If Epstein is a terrible guy for having young girls human trafficked to do sex work for him and make him money, how is Andrew Tate different? How is Andrew Tate a bastion of masculinity? I don't think it's very masculine to have to manipulate women into sleeping with you and to manipulate women into leaving their husbands and sleep with people for money. I think if you're disgusted by Epstein, you should also be disgusted by Andrew Tate.
I think you should be disgusted with Andrew Tate. I mean, the major difference from a legal standpoint is that these again, quote unquote, victims of Andrew Tate have not been described as being underage. Jeffrey Epstein's behavior was illegal and disgusting because he was preying on people who cannot consent to sexual activity, whereas these people in the Andrew Tate situation, unless I've missed something, they're all described as, capable of consent. So what we're arguing about is whether it was his behavior to them was so psychologically manipulative, or it attempts to estrange them from their friends and family, that it amounts to them not being able to consent to what they're doing. And again, I absolutely think he's despicable, should not be revered at all. I find it weird and kind of fascinating that he's been held up in a positive light for some reason, despite, as you say, being someone who he's been held up by some social conservatives, despite being like the business he's in is so clearly against their values, or so I thought. But I do want to let the process play out. I think everyone's entitled to due process. I think, whether you can have regrets about agreeing to get into sex work or agreeing to participate in OnlyFans or something like that. Does that actually mean you were truly physically coerced into doing that? I don't know. Maybe he actually did truly coerce them. That's the case they're bringing. We have to see the charges. A lot of the evidence of the actual charges are in Romanian, and it's hard to tell what precisely he's being accused of. I am absolutely open to the argument that he is guilty of some or all of these charges. And in the past, he's been accused of actually physically assaulting women. There were British women have leveled that charge at him. So we'll definitely see. I'm being a little wary because he's a cult figure. Honestly, he's the way he describes the women and the tactics he used remind me of someone like who's a cult person and has followers, and it's so hard for us to understand. They seem brainwashed to us. Like, what are you doing? Snap out of it. Why did you drink the Kool-Aid? Literally, that whole story, all that kind of thing. And some people are really good and skilled and practiced at having this like almost hypnotic power over the gullible, over people who are looking for some kind of meaning or something in their lives. And I think that's what went on here. Is it criminal? I'm certainly open to it, but I'm not I'm persuaded he's a bad dude. I'm really persuaded he's a bad dude. I'm just not persuaded it's criminal yet.
Right. So Daria Gusa, who's 16 years old, was contacted by Andrew Tate 3 years ago when she was just 16. She had her high school in her Instagram bio. There was a woman who was rumored to be, I guess not rumored, this was a witness giving testimony, was at a party at the Tate's home in November of 2020, was introduced to a 16-year-old girl who he boasted about having a sexual relationship with. And so it does sound like a fair number of the girls that were involved were underage. I mean, there's also reports from these girls that he would take their passport when they got to Romania and agreed to do the work with them. And he intentionally preyed on women who were broke, who didn't have a lot of options. It sounds, really predatory. Not that they were like, oh, I guess I'll join this cult because I kind of believe this guy and he's good looking. It was, it sounds like a lack of options and a lot of manipulation and a lot of predatory behavior. So we'll see what comes of this. But I hope that a lot of the people that have defended Andrew Tate because they like his theories about the manosphere and masculinity will come around and realize who he really is.
I definitely agree with that. More rising right after this.